Now, it said that this term Negroes was then used with a new and specific meaning as a name or designation particularly applied to African slaves. Now, we know that the slave trade was about commerce. They wanted to get these people so they could work, so they could make revenue from their labor without paying them. And that's what slavery is called, forced labor, without any type of compensation. So these slaves had been captured and brought to Portugal from the land of Guinea, below the Sahara, and south of the Senegal River. Now, these three specifics, they emphasize, got to be below the Senegal River, got to be brought to Portugal, got to be below the Sahara, or you're not a Negro, or you can't be a slave, perhaps. This is what they're implying. Now, the thing about it is the institution of slavery was a commercial endeavor, kind of like Nike. If I make a Air Force One, this is my commercial product. I got a copyright on it, I got a trademark on it, and you can't infringe upon those things, or there are legal implications. Now, when you deal with people, and you deal with the legal implications between people and nations, this is where you get treaties coming from. So treaties are going to talk about the status of the people and how the people of one nation are dealt with by the people of another nation, or nation, government, people, citizens, and so on and so forth. So the term Negro is referring to the identity of a piece of commercial property that is used for particular purposes. This is your status, your commercial property. Now, the system that allows that to operate like that, they call it admiralty law or maritime law, international law. It's not like your local city codes and things like that. You can walk across the street here, but if you do it in this city, you get a ticket for jaywalking. International law deals with the common ground that nations will agree to abide by. And they make treaties and things based on that. So, the difference in the identity will dictate the difference in status. Now, if you're a slave, and in that status, and you're a free person here in this status, well, that's a whole lot of difference right there. You got to get permission to do everything, or you don't have to get permission to do anything. All because of your identity, which dictates what your status is. Now, we know here in this country, the Dred Scott case, for example, the judge told the man that the Negroes have no rights because of that status. Negroes have no rights that the white man is bound to respect. Now, this is when you have to go back and look at names again, because we got Negro and we got white, and these are two identities. But if you look at the United States Census Bureau and you try to look up the word white to see what the definition of white is, even though it's a voluntary identification, it will tell you that white people are the indigenous or native people to southwestern Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. And when I read that, I was real puzzled, because I didn't understand how the North Africans became white people. Because this is all about social status, Identification and status will be dictated by the identification. So if you're from North Africa, regardless of what you look like, this is when you trace your lineage, your heritage and things, and you don't know to identify yourself as white, well, then you're going to have to deal with a whole nother set of standards that you have caused yourself to be subject to because of misidentification. Now, say there's a war between the United States and Japan, and the Japanese decide they're going to attack Pearl Harbor, right? So the U.S. says, hold on, we need to protect ourselves. All the Japanese people, round them up, put them over here. If you're a descendant of Japanese people, we're going to round you up and put you over here. Why? Because of reasons of national security. They want to protect themselves from the citizens of this nation. So if your nationality is associated with Japanese in some shape, form, or fashion, you're a potential suspect. Now, if you're Russian, it don't have anything to do with you. If you're Chinese, well, it doesn't have anything to do with you. If you're from Laos or Cambodia or Thailand, well, it doesn't have anything to do with you. Y'all might look just alike, but you're not Japanese. You see? So it's the same way with any other people that has treaties or any type of legal documentation referring to them in a particular status. If you ignore that status, you've ignored all the rights and responsibilities associated with it. Now, when you talk about the Negro people, or the black people, or the African American people, or the Afro American people, or the colored people, I guess it depends on which mood you're in. I haven't really seen the rules, you know. But this book here, Before the Mayflower, written by Lerone Bennett Jr., he made some real good points. What he said about the Portuguese going over there to West Africa, he said, there on the fateful day in 1444, Henry's men came upon the first large group of Africans. They tiptoed through the high grass and crept to the edge of the village, and then said a contemporary, they looked towards the settlement and saw that the who? Moors. Saw that the Moors, with their women and children, were already coming as quickly as they could out of their dwellings, because they had caught sight of their enemies, but they, shouting out St. James, St. George, Portugal, attacked them, killing and taking all they could. Now, he's identifying Moors. So what is a Moor? I mean, where did this term come from? I mean, is it an arbitrary term that just came up? We see that Negro just had a commercial origin. Where did Moorish thing come from? You know, this book here, The Negro in the New World, says that the Turks and Arabs in the Crusades and the Moors of Spain and North Africa had introduced to the mind of medieval Europe the idea of Negro slaves, of black Moors who were strong, willing, and faithful servants to their white employees. The region, which extends from the frontiers of Egypt to the Atlantic and from the Mediterranean to the Niger, was in ancient times inhabited by a people to whom we give the general name of Berbers, but whom the ancients, particularly those of the eastern portion, knew under the name of Moors. They were called Maurici by the Greeks, said Strabo, in the 1st century AD, and Mori by the Romans. They are of Libyan origin and form a powerful and rich nation. This name of Moors is applied not only to the descendants of the ancient Libyans and Numidians who live in the nomad state or in settled abodes, but also to the descendants of the Arabs who in the 8th century AD brought with them Islamism imposed by the saber of Agba and his successors. Even further, it was carried into Spain when Berbers and Arabs reunited under the standard of Musa and Tariq, added this country to the empire of the Khalifa. Now, this is the area right here where it gets where the water gets deep. Because you're not dealing with American Negro history anymore, but you're still reading about your own history. Because the rest of the world wasn't calling us Negroes. That's something that came with the English. You know, the rest of the world still knew us as Moors. Exactly.